Hey everyone, this is Zero X Wing from runebase.org, and you're listening to the Runebase podcast. On this podcast, I have the pleasure of chatting with developers, builders, entrepreneurs, and community members from the THORChain ecosystem and the DeFi and crypto ecosystem at large. And on today's show, I have the pleasure of speaking with Kellen and GJ from Flipside Crypto. Flipside Crypto is a name that folks in the THORChain ecosystem are going to start hearing more and more about here over the next few weeks and months. They are an organization that helps communities and protocols and analysts better understand what's happening in the protocol through data visualization, through creating simple products, dashboards, and tools through which users like communities and protocols and analysts can understand and decipher the KPIs and the key metrics that are happening at the protocol level. These are critical infrastructure for any emerging ecosystem, and having Flipside Crypto's incredible data analytics team and then also their bounty programs helps the ecosystem grow so that everybody in the ecosystem can understand, again, like the critical things that are happening at the protocol level. We also spoke about their stories, about their community, going in depth about how they are building a community of data analysts and people that are learning how to do this kind of thing and eventually shipping products into production. And then we also talked about some sneaky alpha, about a new NFT related project that's going to be particularly interesting to anybody out there who's been following along with ThorGuards. So as always, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you being here, and we will see you on the inside. Peace. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Kellen and GJ of Flipside Crypto. Kellen, GJ, thank you so much for joining.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. We've been chatting alongside one another, working together on some initiatives over the last few weeks, and so it's a pleasure to finally connect in person and make a show out of it. I'd love to start with just a real quick explanation. What is Flipside Crypto?
Yeah, so the short version, Flipside Crypto does on-chain analytics. We make the data available for free for people who want to do it, and then we also will pay people in native tokens, so Rune or Sol or Luna, to solve bounty questions, and then we'll publicize it, put it out there in the world.
Awesome. And so with Flipside Crypto, you make this data free, and then who's the consumer of this data? Like who's the ultimate beneficiary of the output here?
Yeah, I think there are several. There's the community, there's the analyst, and there's the protocol, right? Okay. So the analyst benefits from doing analysis, from learning, from making awesome portfolio pieces. The community benefits from being able to see all this stuff being made, and projects get answers to the most burning questions.
Awesome. And with that, there's a lot of exciting things that you guys have in store, particularly with the THORChain ecosystem, which is where we connected. And so we'll talk a bit more about that. But with that quick introduction out of the way, we'll come back to a place where we love to start with these podcasts, which is getting to know you guys and a little bit about your background and story. And so, G, we just heard from you. So Kellen, why don't you tell us a bit about your background and story, and then how you got into crypto, and then Flipside.
Yeah, sounds good. So I sort of got my start. I studied computer science in college and then got very into the data analytics realm, particularly in sports analytics. So I worked for an NFL team for 5 years after college, and I was super into that space. I'm sort of getting into a little bit of the sports betting space too. And about 6 months ago, I started getting interested in crypto, and I joined Flipside 6 months ago and work as a data scientist on the Flipside Crypto team, and have just been amazed at sort of everything that's been happening. I feel like coming sort of as an outsider 6 months ago, you kind of hear like what crypto is or what's happening, and it feels like all it is meme coins and scams. And then you get into it and you're like, oh, there's actually a lot going on in here. There's NFTs, there's DeFi, there's a lot of gaming sort of things tying into all that. And so, yeah, that's how I came into this crypto world.
Awesome. It's a very recent transition, just 6 months ago. Before you made that jump, were you at all like studying crypto on the side? Were you playing around in it, investing, trading at all? Or was this like, you just drinking from the water?
Yeah. I had heard about crypto in 2017, maybe in the spring of 2017, and had put some money into Ethereum at the time. And I thought I was super cool because most people only knew about Bitcoin, and I knew about this new one called Ethereum, and so felt really cool. And then sort of the late fall of 2017, it went way up and I felt even cooler because I had some of it, and then it crashed and I felt less cool. And so I just kind of ignored it for a few years, but realized about a year ago it was like it was still around, like it didn't go anywhere. And so I started digging in a little bit more, and then 6 months ago, sort of the floodgates opened, and I just went full into it.
Yeah, I think a lot of us can relate to a lot that you just shared. I think the cool, uncool flip that happened as we entered, January 2018 was a roller coaster ride that a lot of people listening, myself included, can relate to. And then also this transition that we made as we realized the inevitability of crypto and how exciting it is and how expansive it is and engaging it is. Like at a certain point, once you have that aha moment with it, it's hard to focus on anything else. And that like Web3 brain drain becomes inevitable. And my timeline maps to yours. I was kind of straddling both worlds for a lot of the bear market and then exited software, Web2 and went full degen into crypto or like early 2021, and it's been the most rewarding transition of my life, and hopefully you can say the same.
Yeah, for sure. Highly recommend it.
Yeah. Come to the light. Step into the light if you're listening.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's we love to hear that story and that background. And GJ, tell us a little bit about your story, background, and how you came into crypto and Flipside.
Sure. So talking about coming into the light, I did solar energy right after grad school.
There you go.
So I
started in the light.
Yeah. Started in the light and have it's been a degen descent since then. My master's degree is economics and Chinese, and so the economics in particular, I took a very macro approach to the world, which fits really well and maps really well to crypto. And so I did my own thing for a little bit after leaving solar, and my business partner is a currencies economist. So we talked about a lot of the ins and outs of it from a theoretical perspective, from a macro perspective, financial markets. So I was talking about it, just intellectually as an intellectual pursuit before I owned, any ETH. I more or less bypassed Bitcoin entirely and went straight to ETH. And then I joined Flipside late last year as a product manager. Some of my professional background is in, PMing and software products, and quickly transitioned into the community role here and also taking charge until recently of our bounty program, just getting that up there, thinking through, visualizing, and making that a reality, which has been incredible amounts of fun. I'm fortunate to get exposure to, all the projects that we run. So I have a very sort of like wide view of the space and what's happening. And within that, THORChain has been one of our most exciting programs and just an incredible amount of interest and hype. And so I got into THORChain, I want to say February or March or whatever, but then sort of a second time, circled back to it to dive deeper once we launched the bounty program and saw just so much interest and energy in it.
Awesome. A lot that you shared there that I kind of like put little stars next to. And if we have time, just the Chinese and economics, dual major or fields of study, and then how that plays into like the theoretical macro side of crypto, like that's something that I love geeking out on. And, because in crypto, there's game theory on a micro perspective, like us as individual participants and the incentivization that's built into it. But then there's also like macro game theory at play here. And it's like, China's desire for ultimate centralization and control versus America's, competing interests of like having the world's, fiat currency, like, innovator's dilemma there, and like versus like pushing innovation offshore. It's an interesting game theory challenge there, but I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole from the start. So we'll put a little star next to that.
We'll get there for sure.
Yeah. And if not on this call, we'll have to do a redux and bring you back for that one. But cool. So you touched on something that I'd love to hear from both of you, which is, your role as did you say you were a project manager inside Flipside?
So I started in product. Right now I'm the community lead.
Okay.
So I get to hang out, and find out where the alpha is and, chat with the people who are actually using, the data, using Velocity, our SQL tool, just actually, doing stuff.
Love it. All right. More and more rabbit holes appear because, community's been a big part, huge part of my last, month and a half, 2 months with ThorGuards, and increasingly so. And it's redefining. I thought I worked in community for the last 12 years, but this experience has redefined how I don't know what I was doing then, but now this is like a new thing. So I have so much to talk about and unpack there. But Kellen, on your side, what's your role inside Flipside?
Right. So I'm a data scientist for Flipside. So what I'll do a lot of is sort of adding layers to the data that already exists within our ecosystem and using that to showcase like what you can do with our data or how it can be useful. So a lot of things that the data science team has worked on are sort of these calculators or apps that will build on top of our data to help users interact with crypto a little more easily. So one example is this Uniswap calculator that we built, where a user can come on to our Uniswap calculator and plug in which pool they're going into, how much they're putting in, the liquidity ranges that they're providing for Uniswap v3, and it'll forecast how much sort of interest will be generated off of that over time. And so again, just sort of this is all using the data within the Flipside ecosystem to sort of help make it like useful and sort of make different protocols more engaging or sort of easier to digest for the average person.
Amazing. And so conceptually, I'm wrapping my head around Flipside, and it sounds like you guys have some, like you take this mess of on-chain data, be it from straight from the Ethereum chain or from Uniswap or from THORChain, and then it sounds like you guys create some products in-house, and then you also provide tools for other people to create, to play with that data. And is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. So at a base level, we sort of scrape all this data from the chain and provide that in a SQL interface for users to access. But then on top of that, we'll also work and say, hey, what more can we provide that's maybe a longer term project or a little more in depth that then we could provide back to the community that helps them interact with crypto in some way.
Awesome. And we talked at the top about some of the potential audiences for those various products that you guys offer, and anything from the communities to the protocols to, you said there was a third constituent.
Yeah, that one was me. I would say the analysts themselves, right?
And
Because it turns out if you spend 50 or 100 hours, wrangling on-chain data, you get pretty good at it.
Okay, awesome. And that's what I kind of, where I was leading this question is like, for these different constituents, like without Flipside, what are they contending with? What's the problem? Are they trying to drive steer ship without a dashboard, or is like the data's available, but it's just a total mess and it's impossible to deal with? What is the problem that each of these constituents face that Flipside kind of like alleviates and solves?
Yeah, I'll handle that one, and then Kellen, if you want to jump in. So on-chain data, and particularly for THORChain, because there's just so much going on, is really gnarly to wrangle. So first, you've got to get to the data somewhere, and if you have to pay for it, then you're out, hundreds or thousands of dollars a year. So the first thing we do is we make the data free and easy, to access with our tool or a tool of your choice. And then the second thing is data curation, right? So putting it into tables that follow an organized logic and structure that just makes it a lot easier than trying to hack your way through with a machete and trying to figure out, where is what I need? How do I find it? So there's a ton of work that goes into data prep and data wrangling, which is a tremendous, percentage of the overall process of analysis. And so making the data available, accessible, and free, but also making it comprehensible with these tables. And then I think the third thing is providing the bounty program to give you structure in terms of what questions are interesting and sort of trace out this course of how do I go from zero to hero and get paid along the way, right? So people who might not jump into data analysis otherwise now have some incentive to get up that learning curve because they're getting paid to, right? So this pay to study, pay to learn model we find gets people over this hump, and then they're hooked, right? Once you're into the data and you can see what's actually happening in close to real time, we find people get like really, really super into it. And that's when they start turning out stuff that educates the space and uplifts the space.
Awesome. Kellen, anything to add to that in terms of like the problem and solution?
Yeah, I think GJ did a great job covering it. I think one thing I'll add too is, and GJ has kind of been on the forefront of this, is sort of building out that Flipside community. So it's also capable of sort of teaching each other. So if you're brand new to SQL or brand new to crypto, there's this whole Discord server that I've been super impressed with where new users can come on, ask a bunch of questions, get answers, and then Flipside itself also provides some resources in terms of like YouTube videos and that type of stuff to help, like if you're new to the space or new to SQL, to sort of get you up and running.
Awesome. And yeah, so tying back into GJ, what you mentioned earlier about your role as a community manager, my many questions on that thread. And then also what you just mentioned about the bounty program. What kinds of people are in this community? Is it mostly like people that seek to earn bounties and to leverage your data sets to create new visualization products in exchange for these bounties? Is it other sort of constituents? Like who's interacting in Discord and what is that experience like for them?
Yeah, I love that question. I'll say we have several different types of users, right? There are the more financially minded people who don't have data wrangling skill, but might know a lot about a project. We have people who just want to know, is the token going to go up? Every project gets some of that.
Yeah.
I'll say we get a lot less in Terra. We call them, moon boys, like people who are just, interested in price. It's more of an analytical crowd for sure, but that can be financial analysis. That can just be following markets, or we do get a big chunk of people who do have SQL skills or can program in R or Python. And so there's the bright core of people who are, skilled enough to do the analysis or really passionate. We get a lot of students as well who see the value in it. And then there's just the broader Discord of people who are interested in reading the analysis and sharing it and, evangelizing and consuming it, but not necessarily, doing the data analysis themselves.
That is fascinating to me because it's always occurred to me that within crypto, there's a million ways that you can be engaged, and there's a million things that can fascinate you. We talked earlier about the macro and the more like games that nation states are playing. You can be interested in like the microeconomics. You can be interested in the social aspects. You can be interested in now with NFTs and this world that I've stepped into. You can be interested in like kind of collectibles or art or the hype or the flex and the status. But then there's also a corner of crypto here in Flipside Crypto where there's like the Reddit data is beautiful crowd, perhaps, where it's like people that really like are like super passionate about data and data visualization and the stories that they can tell and the truth in numbers. And so that's awesome here. What are some of the things that you plan for the community to kind of like, does it kind of manage itself and is it very emergent, or is there anything that you do intentionally to curate the kind of like community and culture that you guys want to see?
Boy, that's a super rich question.
This is my world, right? I mean, this is what I'm doing. So like we're here to talk Flipside crypto data, but there's also community involved. So like we're into it.
Yeah. So let me answer that, I guess, along two lines. Like the first thing is, and data science at Flipside has a huge role in this. You're adding value, right? You want a community to be welcoming, enlightening, like enjoyable place to be. I think the calculators that we put out and the consoles that data science does, a lot of times, are built with community member support, right? So you'll get your absolute top tier, the people who've just like gotten way into the data and say, hey, like come build with us. So that's sort of the pinnacle. And then like at the very base, someone joins and is like, what's THORChain? We do what we call, scavenger hunts. I think for THORChain it was a storm chaser hunt, where you get, paid in Rune just to go through the process, set up a wallet, do some transactions, and actually track them on chain and try to just get people excited to be able to see, oh man, I just made a transaction and it showed up. So there's this like hero's journey, which we try to make a little bit easier, where you step in and maybe familiarize yourself all the way up to now you're building tools that anyone can use, like regardless of their crypto knowledge, to manage a position on THORChain or examine it.
Wow.
So just creating that journey, I think, has really, really worked very well.
That's amazing. How long has this, I guess I was remiss not to get this context from the start, but like how long has Flipside been around and how long have you been seeing like these journeys like evolve for your users?
Yeah, Flipside has been around since 2017.
Oh.
The bounty program, this community-enabled analytics program, has only been live for 6 or 7 months.
Awesome.
And I think THORChain, I want to say maybe 2 months
Yeah.
old, maybe not even that, fairly recent. So, I mean, we've seen a tremendous amount of success in terms of, KPIs, right? The boring numbers, just like user engagement, retention. What we find is that if you pay someone in Rune to get their hands dirty on THORChain, they'll take that Rune, and Kellen's done a lot of work on this, can go deep on the nuts and bolts, something called native token recycling. They take the Rune and just cycle it back into the ecosystem, again, or the Luna, or the Uniswap tokens, Sushi, whatever. And so people who are getting really educated tend to fall in love with just like with the protocol, with whatever they're doing, they're learning. So it's a super good way for projects to acquire and retain users, because as people get more educated, they become investors and stakeholders and governance participators and educated members of the ecosystem.
Yeah. There's a couple things that I can relate my experience with THORChain and Rune to what you just said about when people put in work and they earn Rune, that's cycling back into the ecosystem more than it's being dumped on market. And my journey with THORChain was as an early contributor on the communications and community marketing side in 2018. And so I actually have earned more Rune than I've ever bought. And a couple things with that. First off, when you earn something, I don't know, at least for me, it's like there's a bit more of a, it resembles equity in that sense, and I feel a bit of ownership. And when you multiply that by the second thing, which is like to know THORChain and to know Rune and the ambitions for the THORChain ecosystem and the role that Rune plays in that ecosystem and the value accrual mechanisms, if you understand that and you really grok it, it's like you're bullish. And so, you're not going to, see me exiting any positions, anywhere south of hundreds of dollars for not financial advice, good Lord. But yeah, it's great to hear that community is happening. And it's great to hear that, it sounds like through that you've been educating people and actually changing their lives through this journey. Like, is that fair to say? Like, people enter your Discord and they're learning a new skill and they're learning how to do something they didn't know how to do before, and maybe finding new careers out of this.
Yeah, so I have a litany of testimonials, people saying like, yes, the bounty program changed my life. Flipside changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
We don't broadcast that necessarily. That's not the type of thing you necessarily want to flex. These are personal stories. But yeah, it happens all the time. People have gone on to full-time jobs in crypto as a result of the program. I have Andril in mind. Andril, if you're listening to this, shout out. Just like, I remember his message being like, starting my first, job like in full-time crypto. This happens like regularly. It's one of the things I think I'm most proud of from the community sense, like, because a lot of these people start at zero. Some of our very best analysts, and I will say, Flipside has the best on-chain analysis in the world. Like, the best analysts in the world are not, working for, they're certainly not in TradFi, like, and some of them obviously will be in protocol Discords. Most of them just live in the Flipside Discord. Like, I am firmly convinced of that. I think the results bear that out. Some of them started at zero. Some of them, like Kellen, didn't know anything 6 months ago about crypto, had never heard of THORChain, and now are beasts. Like, you can throw any question their way and they'll be able to answer it. And a lot of the times, if you incentivize them, they'll make a tool for it so other people can understand it as well. That's incredibly gratifying to see.
Yeah.
To see people start and just watch them, grow and progress and flourish until they know just a tremendous amount about the ecosystem and just give back and help people who are new answer their questions, participate, in Discord. Like, we're really proud of what we've built, I think, is the takeaway.
Yeah. It occurs to me as you say that there's it's not the exact same thing, but there's a rhyme or analogy here with Immunify. And we spoke with Mitchell at Immunify. Are you guys familiar? It's like the bug bounty platform. And they secure like many billions of dollars in assets with their bug bounty platforms, including THORChains. And they have a community of white hat and gray hat hackers and security experts and pen testers. And, just as we, talked about earlier, where like you could be interested in crypto from many different angles, you could be interested in THORChain in many different angles. And if I'm assuming here, I don't know this like perfectly, but I'm assuming that like the overlap between people who are really into THORChain and really into like data and data science and analytics are, it's a relatively small fraction of that community. And so they might be in the THORChain Discords and ecosystem telegrams and THORChain Twitter and stuff, but it's in the Flipside community where they can really find their people and they can really nerd out on a deeper level with people in the THORChain ecosystem, but then also, in others as well. And so you find your kindred spirits in your Discord, and yeah, it can change a life. So that's awesome. The bounty program sounds like something that, where can people go to learn more about the bounty program and the work you're doing there?
Yeah, I'll share some links after this, but short answer is discord.gg/flipside. Come, jam with us, come hang out, ask questions, THORChain channel, general, whatever. Always down to chat there. We do have a website, and we also have a finest page, like a compilation of some of the best bounty work people have done. That's flipside.com/finest, just for a quick glimpse. So Discord's great. come at us on Twitter. Like, we try to be active, where the people are. So, anywhere you want, come at us.
Awesome. Now to change gears a bit, you guys teased something maybe right before we hit record, and that is a special initiative that we're working on, you guys are working on in collaboration with the teams at THORChain, and that is, what was it called? The console. Kellen, is this something that you can provide some context on? What is the THORChain console and why are we excited about it?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to. So yeah, like GJ mentioned, we went live with our THORChain data a few weeks ago. And one thing that we sort of had on the agenda even before that was building kind of what you're saying is this THORChain console, which provides a ton of, it's kind of like a key metrics dashboard for THORChain. So there's a lot of things happening on THORChain. There's swap, there's liquidity providing, there's pools, there's these node operators, there's sort of this incentive pendulum that keeps everything in balance. So there's a lot going on, and we wanted to make something that sort of puts all that into one page in a very visual way. And so this console that we've built out, which is sourced all from our community bounties. So these are queries that are written by our community and our users that is then sort of being fed into this system where it shows, okay, show me the swap volume of a certain pool over the last month. And it sort of displays in a graph the results of that. And so there's maybe 20 of these charts that you can see within this dashboard that will sort of give you context into sort of the key metrics and sort of what is happening on THORChain right now.
That's awesome. And where is that live or something that's in development right now?
That's in development, but about 90% done. So hopefully later this week and at the latest early next week, that'll go live.
Cool. And so you said that this is pieced together from collaborative efforts from people in your bounty program, plus it sounds like people from Flipside bringing it all together?
Exactly, yeah. So the sort of the queries that are feeding the data, that are feeding the charts are all sourced from this bounty program that we run. So we got together a few weeks ago and said, okay, in order to build this console, what are the metrics that we need? What are the queries that we need to have written? And we basically took those and created bounty questions out of those. So for one, it's like, what is the weekly APY of each pool? And so instead of sort of centralizing the answer to that question, we distributed that question and said, okay, community, everyone take your best crack at sort of writing this query to produce this output. And then in the end, the Flipside team was in charge of aggregating all of those queries and then putting it into this dashboard.
Awesome. And so an output here is a visual dashboard that anybody can come to and get a heads up display on the status of the network and all the KPIs and key metrics. Would there also be like a cleaner API that developers can use so that they don't have to go to messy on-chain data?
Yeah, exactly. So with sort of this velocity tool we have, there's also an API that's sort of derived from that. And so if you write this query, there's sort of this API button you could click to turn it into an API endpoint. And then from there, you can pull that data in whatever format you want. So if you're writing in Python or R, sort of whatever language or program that you're using, even Tableau sort of has this API endpoint connection. And so you create that API endpoint, and then that's accessible from anywhere.
Cool. Now, that kind of segues into, in a weird way, I guess, another question I have about Flipside, which is, are you guys a centralized company? What's your business model versus are you a protocol with an open model? The business model has implications on your APIs and how developers might interact with your APIs. Yeah, what's the business model of Flipside? What's the entity?
So I'm going to shill a little bit here.
Shill.
And it's not immediately, so just bear with me. There's a project called Metrics DAO that just spun up in the last couple of weeks that Flipside is an ardent supporter of, but it's a distinct entity wherein you can go with any crypto question and get an answer. Right? That's the vision. Or you can just go and jam out with other analysts. So we want to take what we learned at Flipside, and I'm on the Genesis crew. We've got a super, super talented Genesis crew, except for me. I don't know how I got in there. Just some really
I feel that way often.
Potent names.
Like,
yeah. Well, you never want to be the smartest person in the room, right? If so, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
So like, I am happy to just observe and learn from this crew. But the idea there is that Flipside has this bounty program. It's succeeded beyond our wildest dreams. We want there to be some decentralized output and consumer of Flipside data and other data providers, right? So, the Graph, Covalent, Nansen, Dune for Ethereum, where people can go and pose questions and then get rewarded for answering or for cleaning the data or for any step along that process, sort of independently of Flipside. So Metrics DAO, I think, is the evolution of that. How do you decentralize the entire process of on-chain analytics? It is very early. We are still figuring, we're building this on the fly, but that's going to be, I think, the really exciting evolution of how do you own this on-chain analytics space, as the crypto community? How does this entire community come together and own and operate in a decentralized fashion this business intelligence and analytics function or set of functions and services? So super, super excited about that. That's how I think, Flipside is going to continue to support this push toward more decentralized data analytics. And then one quick thing on business model. So we operate under a grant program. So THORChain gave us a grant to run bounties. Half of that is just to, pay people like Kellen to do the hardcore data work. And then the other half is paid out as bounties. Mm-hmm. So again, the theory here being, and it's been proven, to work in practice, for putting Rune in the hands of people via the bounty program, it works so well because then they're just going to recycle it back into the ecosystem. Yep. And we found that dramatically outperforms airdrops in terms of, reducing sell pressure, in terms of driving outcomes, cultivating, engaged, vibrant community. This is a better airdrop, by far a better airdrop.
Yeah.
And that's part of the...
Sorry, yeah, no, I just relating to that, this is a very strange analogy to draw, but in 2013, I went through an accelerator called Startup Chile, based out of Santiago, Chile, and it was government run, and it was equity free. So they didn't take any equity from the business, and they give 100 teams per batch $40,000 to come to Chile and build their businesses for 6 months. And 80% of that money was spent in Chile again. And, entering the Chilean economy, it was 100 companies, $40,000 per company. So it was $4 million per batch, which is nothing, a drop of the bucket for a government. And what it was doing was, it was a stimulus program that was bringing entrepreneurs from all over the world to their country, putting them on the map as the Silicon Valley of Latin America. And meanwhile, the majority of that capital was staying in their ecosystem, and it was just a pass through back to the Chilean economy. And so it occurs to me that we have just a digitized version of this, perhaps, where the THORChain ecosystem deploys some capital, brings people through a program into the ecosystem, compensating in their currency, and then that currency mostly stays in the ecosystem. And so it's a win-win all around. So yep. Very cool. And it's also great to hear that, like many others, including us, we start with a more traditional, I don't know if Web 2, but traditional kind of organizational structure and business models, for Runebase, actually. It's funded by the THORChain Treasury grants, and also we just, I think, occasional sponsored stuff. I one sponsored thing. But, then we think, what is the Web 3 native model for this look like? What does this look like, leveraging community, leveraging networks, and leveraging tokens? And for us, it's a little bit of a departure, but ThorGuards is absolutely just an extension of that brainstorm. But there's still, even just in media, there's still Web3 native models for media, like Bankless DAO is doing some really interesting stuff, at that intersection. So yeah, in the minutes that we have left here, I think this is a good segue into what the future holds for Flipside. Love to hear either of you. We just heard from you. So Kellen, what are some of the initiatives or some of the things on the roadmap that you guys have that you're excited about inside Flipside?
Yeah, so from a data science perspective, we always sort of have this think tank of different projects and ideas we can work on. So one that we're starting to work on is the NFT scene has been around, but definitely I feel exploded the last month or so. So we're sort of shifting gears more in that direction and making sure that we have kind of quality NFT data. So one app that the data science team is working on right now is what we're terming this NFT Deal Score App. And so what that will be is a singular place that houses a bunch of NFT data, and particularly sort of pulls all the metadata and all the sales history from each NFT collection and evaluates and assesses what the price should be for each individual token. And from there, a new user can come on, and let's say they're looking at ThorGuards, for example, and they're like, hey, I really want to get a ThorGuard, but I'm not sure sort of with all the different attributes, which ones are valuable, which ones are rare. And they can come onto this app and based on this model that we've built can say, oh, hey, here's the cheapest one, but based on the attributes and the rarity, this is maybe the best value that's on OpenSea right now. So that's one thing we're working on that we're super excited about.
That's incredible. I mean, the cheapest option is not always the best deal. And you have to take value into account, and value in the form of NFTs can come from many different places and can often be subjective. So if you hope to quantify, for example, the relative value of different NFTs within a collection, some of that's subjective, but I imagine part of this is you're looking at like what the community has signaled is valuable through looking at recent sales. And so you can kind of triangulate, okay, like this hairstyle is valued pretty highly, or this, whatever else, this body armor is valued highly. It sounds incredible and something like I know that our community would eat up. What's the timeline on that? Like, how is that something that's like in active development, or just like on the idea board? Where are we with that?
Yeah, that's definitely on the front burner. We're actually working on scoping out the timeline for that right now. So I'll give the very vague answer of soon.
Okay.
But like measured in weeks rather than months,
okay,
I think is probably what we can say without getting in trouble.
Crypto speed.
Exactly.
Crypto
yeah.
speed. I do the same. If Pivot, my partner, is listening, he'll be laughing here because like our role, he balances me out where I just like I'll get on live streams and I'll just like start talking and he'll be like no, like heal. I'm like I share everything. But that's fascinating. And so you'll be able to provide more than like a rarity tools, just kind of like stack rank. You'll be able to also take, relative valuations and compare those against if it's a buy now price or a floor price, and actually give people a perspective into actual like possible alpha.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you can imagine if someone's new coming into this, like they have no idea why one should be worth more than the other. And so this sort of gives them some context and it'll illustrate why this certain ThorGuard is worth more. Kind of like you're saying, whether it's like the armor or the gender or kind of whatever the hairstyle is. It'll sort of be able to look at historical sales and see sort of what the community has determined the value of that is. So it's trying its best to take something that is sort of inherently subjective and quantifying that and helping new users be able to kind of see that environment.
That's powerful. And now, is that going to be a free and open tool, or is that going to be like a paid subscription? What is that?
Everything Flipside does is free, so this will be one of the many free tools we have.
That's incredible. And will you do that on a collection by collection basis, or is this going to be a template that you can roll out across the entire, world of NFTs and everything that's listed on OpenSea?
Yeah, the idea is that it's a general template, sort of a general model that can be applied to any NFT collection. And sort of what we'll do is break down each collection into sort of some various pieces in terms of the attributes and the rarity, and sort of generalize from there. The work will be making sure that we were able to have all that NFT metadata in our database.
That is incredible. And I can say from very firsthand experience that the appetite for these kinds of tools is really, it's intense. And people want to know rankings. People, Rarity Tools does a decent job. Ranking Sniper is coming up behind them, or Rarity Sniper. And I think, it's early days there. I don't think we've seen the last entrant in any of those. And I think, it sounds like what you're building is it's going to find a lot of demand, and I'm excited for you there. And I think if you want to explore that, there's business models behind that too. I know because I've been on the funding end of that business model. And so that's super exciting, and we would love to help out however we can as you guys go to bring that tool into production. There is one thing that does come to mind, which is that a lot of these collections, ours included, like we have 9 published attributes in our metadata, but there's actually like 14 or 15 attributes that are just unlisted. So things like skin color, armor color, headgear color, and those do make their way into some of the subjective values where, like, for example, like color coordination. And so I feel like that there's always going to be, like, with an algorithm, we'll be able to do really well. And also, if this algorithm becomes popular, it can become one of those self-reinforcing truths, right? Like, it can, if enough people have eyes on this thing that says this is valuable, then this becomes valuable by virtue of that signal. But then there will always be room for, like, subjective human tastemakers. Well, for a while, until, computer vision and AI makes its way into the Flipside Crypto Nft Deal Score, but we don't want to leak that alpha yet, do we? Awesome. That's super exciting. Thank you for sharing that. G, in the last few minutes here, what's something that's going on in Flipside that you're excited about?
Yeah, I want to actually shout out really quick the Fat Thor auction that you guys are doing for Angel Protocol. Flipside, yeah, there it is. I love it. I love that you have that sitting there.
Yes.
Yeah, so Flipside is part of the charity alliance that Angel Protocol over on Terra has, spun up. So, and I do some work with Angel, so I'm super excited about that. I would say, like, just I don't want to drop any more alpha. That doesn't seem fair. For us, it's continuing to be like a cornerstone of the THORChain ecosystem to the extent that we can, and continuing to put tools in the hands of projects that are trying to launch and do, fair. We talked about native token recycling earlier. One of the things that data science came out with recently for Terra was a leaderboard score. What are the addresses that are least likely to dump tokens if they get them? What are the ones that are, most active in participating in governance? A number of other on-chain behaviors that all roll up into who are responsible citizens, who are really valuable members of a given ecosystem. And we are very confident that if you can focus on those users and cultivate them and identify them and ultimately airdrop to them instead of just airdropping more broadly, you're not going to get the dumping, you're not going to get the mercenary capital, you're not going to get all the sell pressure because you found the people who are really going to help you build your community and build your ecosystem. So I'm a community guy. Like, at the end of the day, that's what I do. So, what is Flipside doing? We are continuing to build our community, but also helping use on-chain data to help other projects that are launching build their community.
That's awesome. And I think it's playing a critical role. It's taking a ecosystem like THORChain's from, its infancy. This is part of the maturation process. You can't manage something if you can't measure it. And, as you mentioned, from the protocol developers to the analysts to the community, they need to be able to see a dashboard display of the KPIs in order to make sure that things are going in the right direction. And so we are super excited. I first started hearing your name about 2 months ago through our mutual friends at Nine Realms, and we got the introduction, and it's just great to see that the ecosystem is maturing and building out some of these pillars and primitives that are necessary for other developers and builders and investors and entrepreneurs to come in and have all the tools they need at their disposal. So thank you guys so much for taking the time. This is super exciting. Last question, where can people go to learn more about Flipside?
Start with Twitter. I think Discord is on there as well. It's also in my profile. You can click on the link and join there. So Discord's active. Come, jam with us. Come hang out. We are pretty active on Twitter as well. So go to Twitter and then flipside.com/finest if you want a glimpse of what some of the people have built.
Awesome. Thank you guys both so much. It's been awesome, just working alongside of you in chat to date, and then now to finally put faces with the names. We look forward to collaborating with you more in the future.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Peace.